Hello again, friends. Welcome back. My name is Oscar Montesiga, certified wine and spirits instructor for the International Wine and Spirits Guild. And you have Nick Eastwood here joining me at the Booze Library at Cork Vintage Academia. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Oscar.
Happy to have you. What are we tasting today?
Today we're tasting Amazonian Gin Company, their flagship gin, straight from Peru.
Straight from Peru. So they do claim, which I believe is the first gin out of Peru. It's called Inca Distillery. So even though the label may say Amazonian Gin Company, does it say company? It says. But the producer is Inca Distillery. The product is Amazonian Gin Company. And they're, of course, using some native Amazonian or Peruvian botanicals, as well as others, I'm sure, like juniper, which I don't know that they would have in Peru.
Right? They don't tell us. In fact, in addition to just not telling us, they specifically say that it's a secret blend on here.
Yeah.
Masterfully distilled, a secret combination. Yeah, so
it's a secret combination.
Everything we're going to be telling you about what we taste is just literally what our palates and noses are telling us, because at the end of the day, we don't know what's in here besides juniper, because juniper legally has to be included in any gin. Although, spoiler alert, I didn't find much juniper in it at all upon our pre-taste.
It has to be there kind of by, categorically speaking in any gin, but the quantities they use is really up to the producer. With that said, what makes a gin, which I don't know that I've covered so in depth last time? Gin is a distilled spirit that is usually a neutral spirit. The most traditional, gins or even predecessors to gin, the genevers and juniper berry spirits in Netherlands and so on. I mean, they were traditionally made with grain. The most high quality spirits tend to be barley or wheat. But today you can make gin with any base that you can ferment, just like vodka. In this particular case, which we do find surprising, is sugar cane, distilled sugar cane, but it must reach the neutral level. That tends to mean 195 proof or so, basically essentially making a sugar cane vodka. But then what do you do with that vodka to make it a gin? You infuse juniper through several processes. It could be a compound gin, to where you're just kind of macerating and kind of mixing ingredients with that liquid, or obviously the most traditional would be through vapors. So you make another distillation through where you're hanging or exposing those ingredients, botanicals, through the liquid and through vapors in distillation, and they become essentially aromatized. So that's kind of the gist of gin. I think I do cover gin on my other episode a little more in depth. Here is just more a curiosity of novelty, of having something kind of foreign, kind of new to the market, and also a guessing games. And to be, to say the granted that the producers gave us a lot of really cool pictographs, or the imagery of things that they may use.
It is a beautiful
including
label.
Juniper.
Yeah. So I mean, just looking at the label, we can kind of take some guesses as to what's included, assuming that they would choose to portray on their label what they use.
Secret recipe.
Right, which some of it's probably just because it looks pretty, some of it is probably because they actually included it. We see some limes on here, some juniper, of course.
Yeah, that's another.
Some
citrus. So there's several citruses. One's large and green, others orange citrus.
Yeah, there's some.
There's star anise besides juniper, and then there's some red berries. Almost looks like red currants. I don't know if it's, they don't quite look like cranberries.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what those are.
Yeah, and then there's a flower, a blossom. I don't know if that is one of the traditional flowers that they use in gin making. I don't see any roots or spices like they would do in other traditional gins, like coriander or
angelica root.
Yeah.
We're looking at this berry on here that it looks to be some sort of gooseberry, or we're not sure exactly. It almost looks like a little yellow tomatillo.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Otherwise, yeah,
it's like a yellow-orange berry that has a husk like tomatillo would. And we find a couple of options. I mean, just generically speaking of what those could be. One was a ground cherry.
Ground cherry, yeah, that's
ground cherry, or whatever. It could be completely something else. But out of searching online for similar images, we found ground cherry to be. So if you want to look at what that looks like. And then the other thing I found there's a couple of like brown looking avocados, which to me reminds me a little bit of mamey, but I don't know what they could be. So
Yeah,
if you have any hints, let us know.
they're very bean shaped, but who knows? For all we know, it could be an indigenous Peruvian thing that just doesn't make its way outside of the Andes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is sitting at 41%, which is low for a gin. So it's definitely not a London dry style gin. It is a contemporary, modern take on a gin, which is fine. Completely wanting to highlight your local exotic botanicals, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, let's give this a sniff. Oh my God, the first thing that hits you and just is persistent is the citrus. Mm-hmm. There's every kind of citrus under the sun you can tease out in here. The big ones for me are Meyer lemon, lime, mandarin orange, grapefruit pith. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I
do have orange there as well. Even Buddha's hand.
Yes.
And the other one called well, it's not a citrus, but it's citrusy. It's a starfruit. Mm-hmm. Hints of juniper, and to me, the juniper is less of a berry and more of a green tree, like green juniper tree.
It's definitely not the star of the show on this gin.
Yeah. And then hiding behind all the citrus and the hints of juniper that I got was a little bit of anise, basil, or even coriander and cardamom, but they're very subtle.
I definitely get the anise and a little bit of cardamom, maybe clove if I really search for it. I do get a little bit of berries that are not juniper berries.
Yeah.
I do smell maybe some like persimmon, blueberries going on.
Yeah, I can see.
I get some lemongrass, and then definitely some floral, something floral in there that's maybe rose.
So the intensity of the nose is pretty much adequate, and I would say ordinary character. The flavor is concentrated. It is medium body, sufficient alcohol, and some complexity. If I had to get the impression comparatively of the nose versus the palate, the start of the nose is for me citrus. For me on the palate, the thing that not that stole the show, but that was really like forefront for me was the perfume. When you said roses on the nose, I had tasted that on the palate. It's really like blossom water, like rose water almost. Maybe a little bit of orange water in there. It's perfumey.
It is definitely more so on the palate, but I wouldn't call it a floral rum compared to some other ones that I have had. That's what I meant, gin. I wouldn't. If somebody was coming into my store as a spirits retailer and asked me for a floral gin, this is not one that I would point them to. If it was they asked me for a citrus gin, this is probably the first thing I would think of. If it was if it was a product I carried. I unfortunately do not carry this particular product at my store. But yeah, I think it's everything you said. I get the same as far as characteristics on the mouth, not thinking about flavor per se. I think it is astringent, but most gins are, so I don't think it's more so than it should be.
Yeah.
You said it was medium bodied. To me, I think it's a little bit medium light. Maybe that's just because we had just filmed an episode with some sotol, and that was a little bit
sotol,
and that was a little bit more viscous. But yeah, I thought this was a great gin actually. But with the caveat of if I want a classical gin, a gin where I know that there's going to be juniper front and center because juniper equals gin in my brain, this is not something I would ask for. But if I'm looking for a fun spirit that is different, that I will drink with pleasure, this is definitely one of those.
Yeah, and it could be a good introduction to people that don't drink gin to a gin, right? Something that instead of doing vodka with lime or lemon, hey, have a citrusy gin. Why not?
Yeah, and as far as pairing with food, I think this would be a great pairing with any Peruvian food. I mean, you always want to pair what you're drinking with something that comes from the same places that you're eating. So I think this would be a great option to go with ceviche or a Peruvian fried rice. I think this would be an excellent option, like a martini, for example, to go with one of those dishes.
Yeah, and even though I would happily sip this on its own because it doesn't have the pungency of a Christmas street juniper gin base, I could sip this on its own, but it would make it a very nice, refreshing cocktail or martini as well. And yeah, no brainer, pair it with ceviche or other seafood. Maybe a very light pasta or a rice dish. Maybe a quick and simple like fried fish taco.
Oh yeah, that'd be really good.
Yeah, that could be fun. For me on the palate, besides the perfume and the citrus, I got a little bit of mango, a little bit of white pepper, anise, and licorice, which kind of showed up on the nose. So yeah, I'm happy sipping on this on its own without dilution, but it would also make a nice little cocktail. If you guys have tried this gin, let us know what you have smelled or tasted. Or if you're close, if you're in Peru watching and you have an idea of what these local ingredients, assuming they're local, what they are and represent, please let me know. I'll be happy to read the comments. And I guess that's the frontier. I mean, what else is Peru gonna come out next with? They've already mastered pisco. Shout out to pisco producers, beautiful, great producers and fermenters or winemakers / distillers. I love pisco.
We should do an episode on pisco next. I love it as well.
Yeah,
especially Peruvian pisco.
And they've also mastered, or at least started to get their food onto an agave spirit made in Peru. Whiskey they've already done. I have my hands on some Peruvian whiskey. Wow. Gin is here, and what is next? I mean, I don't know that I'll be too excited about a Peruvian vodka, but if it's there, we'll take it. Maybe a Peruvian rum. Is there Peruvian rum? They're using sugar right now, so
clearly they have sugarcane spirits.
Maybe some of those are stuck in the domestic market for Peru internally. But yeah, we're excited for Peruvian gastronomy and beverage culture, which is expanding and ever growing. We're excited to taste that and share with viewers. So,
thanks for watching.
Anything else you want to say? Shout out your contact info.
Oh, you can follow me at Nikowood, NIKOWOOD. That's gonna be the socials that I have. I'm not on too many things. I think Instagram is gonna be the big one.
It's enough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for watching. Please share to all your friends that love gin or other spirits. As you know, we've reviewed plenty in the past. And give a shout out to Nick because he's gonna join me again for another Sotol episode in the future. But like he hinted at, maybe a Pisco episode as well. Thanks for being here, Nick.
All right. Thank you, Sante.
Chin chin.